Okay, welcome back. We are now going to go through model-driven apps. So model-driven apps rely on the dataverse. So you need to have that dataverse component complete. So model-driven apps differ to Canvas apps in that you are pretty restricted in terms of, restricted is the wrong word. The skeleton of the app is created for you in a model-driven app. Whereas with a Canvas app, you are starting with a blank canvas. Of course, you've got templates and things you can start on with the Canvas app, but the model-driven app it has a skeleton from which it hangs from. So let's have a look at a bit more about model-driven apps, what we mean by that. So it is rich component focused, no-code design environments. You will see how no-code it really is. You can add business rules and business process flows to model your business process, and then the application wraps around that business process. And it builds out these complex apps that are responsive on both web and mobile. So you create the apps around the forms that people need to enter the data and the processes that underline those business processes. You can build the table forms pretty quickly, drag and drop fields to create these forms for data input. This here is an example of a form. So you create these columns and the data that shows and what can be edited and added and viewed only, that kind of thing. It's rich and responsive. It reflows across the devices that it shows on, and you can easily share the forms dashboards across multiple applications. So anything you can create on that entity can be shared with other applications that use that entity. Let's have a look on the side here. So some of the things you can see here on this. No, hang on. Yep. So this at the top here is a business process flow. There we go, business process flow. So this at the top is the business process flow that this follows. So qualify a lead, develop the opportunity, prepare and send quote, send invoice. That is the business process that this app is based on. Let's go a bit more business process flow. So these are visual indicators. So this is the designer up here. This is the designer that creates the flow, business process flow. And the user gets this, this roadmap almost, gateways. I like to think of them as gateways. So to pass through this gateway, there are certain rules that need to be passed in terms of data. So to pass through this gateway, you need to have this data supplied, or there's some rules that you can set up around that data. You can also configure automations to start on entry of a business process flow. So it reduces that need for training. It's all very intuitive as to what the process is, and it supports this common line of business methodology. So you're making sure that the right data is caught at the right step within that business process, so everyone's doing it the same way. That's pretty cool. It is all server-side logic bound to the tables, works across all the apps. You can create calculated fields, roll-up fields. Once you create that data in the view and add it, you create the data in the table, you then add it to the view. That view is then replicated in the apps. So there's no need to go and redo apps. It's all server-side logic. All the business rules are on the server side, not in the app itself. In terms of the key thing about this is that this applies to Canvas apps as well as model-driven apps. In fact, anything on the Power Platform. There's these things called solutions, and what we do is we package everything into a solution, which then means you can export it between other environments and you can keep it all in the one spot. It also is good for things like version control and rollback and things like that. This is an example of a solution. So in fact, when you're doing the imports, when you're importing the answers from the downloaded lab pack that you've got, you import those zip files into the solution area. I showed you that in lab 1. This is a solution, so you can see in this solution I've got 2 apps in this solution. There are tables bundled into this. There's 2 tables. There's a choice column. There's a business process. There's a sitemap. So you can see here that we're packaging all of these apps that make up the solution that is device procurement, all of these components into the one solution, which is really good for all these lots and lots of benefits. Also has things like an integrated solution checker to make sure that everything is okay before you deploy it. So in the Apps Maker portal, when you go to create your new app in the lab, you will see you'll have this appear, and you'll have a choice of a modern app designer in preview or a classic app designer. We are imminently ready for the modern app designer. However, at this point in time, the lab documents and the recording here is based on the classic app designer. I will show you in a separate video how to change to, I might do it at the end of this one, I'm not sure yet, but I will show you how to view your app in the modern app designer. But just know that please create a classic app designer, because all of the labs are pointing at that classic app designer. But know that it works. It's fine. It's okay. But the modern app design is much easier. Let's talk about some of the key terminology that you will learn. You will hear. So there's a table. This is just an entity. It describes a real world object. So if you're familiar with databases, this will be very, very familiar to you. So a table is just an item which has columns in it that you track. So it could be a contact or an account. So contact, Tony Brooks; account, Futurability. Account is the company, contact is the person that's in the company. Standard tables are available inside Dataverse. You can customize a non-standard table or create a custom table from scratch. So you can customize these tables or you can build your own. Inside a table, you have columns, and a column is just a particular attribute of that data. So a contact has a name, it has an email address, it has other things, an address. So a contact has these attributes. So that's just a column, and a column has a data type. So that can be text, number, date, currency, lookup. A lookup creates a relationship with another table so that other table stores the values that can be used in that lookup. So for example, office location, that kind of thing. Columns are typically used within forms for data entry, views for viewing data, and searches for, of course, retrieving data. And then you have relationships. Relationships are between tables, and they define how tables are related to each other. There are different types of relationships. There's one-to-many, many-to-one, or many-to-many types of relationships. I won't get into those in much detail, apart from just, let's just, for example, adding a lookup field, like say we've got an offices table, and a contact can be based at a certain office, and that's known as a one-to-many relationship. There is one record in the office table, and there are many records in the contact table. So one-to-many. Another example of a one-to-many would be a contact and account. So an account, Futurability, has more than one employee, more than one contact. So that's another one-to-many relationship. You can read up on those in the lab materials that we'll go through in detail there. And indeed, the help articles on Dataverse are great for this. And then you have choices, which is a special type of column which gives the user a set of predetermined options. Now, each option has a number value and a label. When added to a form, this column displays a control for the user to select an option. So by default, it will just create that control for the user well, just not even by default, it will just create that control for the user to select an option. Note there are two types of choices. There's choices where the user can select just one option, and multi-select choices, which allows more than one selection. So just be aware of that. Do you want the user to select one and only one, or can they select more than one? So they're the key, some key terminology that you'll encounter. We went through tables and columns earlier in the course, just to say that in this lab that you're going to work through, you'll be focusing a lot on business rules, views, and forms, because that is what these things are what surfaces in inside model-driven apps. There is a data column over here. There's a data tab. The data tab just shows a view. So the best way to view data is actually by using views to view the actual data. So just be aware that that data is there, but it's often better just to view it through a form. Just check my notes. Make sure there's anything else here that I need to mention in here. Oh, for forms versus views. A view is just that. A view allows you to view the data. A form is about entering data. So the difference there between views and forms. Columns have got different data types. You can choose the different data types to have in there. Oh, the other thing on this one, actually, note that you have these breadcrumbs that are created. So in terms of navigating through the UI, use these rather than the back button. It's a bit faster to do that. Yeah, awesome. Oh, another question, another good thing about this. When is it a good time to use a choice versus a lookup? Choice is if you only got a few options that don't change that often, a choice is good. If you've got a lookup table that potentially can be populated by an external data source, then use a lookup column. A lookup, you can have multi-select on a lookup column. If the particular data, like Office is probably a good idea for a choice, because you're not going to have many different offices. But maybe something like if you're a law firm for law types or something like that, and they change all the time, then maybe you're going to have a lookup table for that. So choices versus lookups. Cool. Yep. Columns, we've got data types. Here's all the different data types that you can have for columns, which we went through earlier, so I won't go into too much detail on that. So this is the app designer. So as I say, this is the classic app designer, and the modern experience is a little bit better, but this is still functional. It still gives you, it's still very powerful. Very soon there will be a new experience. The important things here are the site. So let's look at the site map. The site map, this is what's seen in the left-hand column of the application. So the site map is what determines what's in this part of the application. So let me show you what a model-driven app looks like. So let's go into apps here, and sorry, device procurement is a model-driven app. So let's play. So this is a model-driven app. So this over here is the site map. So we've only got one thing on the site map, but here here's where you would define other things for that site map. But before you create that site map and add things onto it, you need to create some forms. Now forms, this is the user interface for the form, and the form, you've got limited, although the skeleton framework is there for the app, there are still lots of design options to be made on a form. So on the form here, you connect the form to, you can either start the form from scratch and just start drawing on the fields that you want. So you've connected it to an entity. We've connected it to this account entity. And that means we've got these fields available here to drag over onto the canvas over here. And different controls like a timeline control and things like that. So you can put these, you do have a lot of design options to be made. So for example, you can make fields, you can not show them, you can show them, make them read-only, you can show them as disabled. You can base your form on a view that's already created or on a form that's already there. You can clone a form to create a new form. It is very drag and drop when you're creating these forms in the form designer. If I bring up a form designer to have a look at, so here is an example of form, and very similar to how we have on Form Designer in Canvas apps, you have a tree view that shows you the hierarchy of controls on here and the fields that are available. You've linked this form to a column, to an entity. The entity here is device order. That's what you'll be building out. And then you've got all the columns that are available in that entity to then drag over onto your form. So yeah, you'll get to play with that in the lab. You can also look at views. So forms are where you enter data. Views are how you view data. And views can be embedded into forms, or views can stand alone as quick view forms in their own right, quick view items in their own right. And one other thing about views, you can filter these. So you've got this filter by down here, where you can set various filters so that owner is the current user is a good one. So there's an owner column in Dataverse that is on every single table. So you could have that filter so that you're only seeing your own records and the status is active. So you can put filters down here if you want to as well. Here's the business rule designer. We saw this earlier. A couple of extra things on this business rule designer. If we look at this bit down here, on the bottom left, you'll see that. So here you're building out your logic in these different in these different stages here. So this is the trigger. This is what happens. This is what triggers it. This is the event that happens. Then here is it in plain English. So this bit here is basically the logic that you're building in here, just in a text view. It's really good for me able to sort of look at it in one panel to say, okay, well, this is saying if the project start is greater than the project end and the project end contains data, then showing this, then show the error message, and the error message project start must be but before the project end. So that's pretty cool. So that gives you that text view of it. The other thing that's pretty neat is this thing down here on the bottom right is the text, bottom left down here. This is a map. So this can get quite. I've seen business rules that can be quite have lots of stages. This here just gives you like an overview map, like a little map, so you can see where you are, and you can go high level here to then zoom into the right place that you want to look at. So do check those out when you're in the lab and see those being built out. That's the business rule designer. And now the business process flow designer. So this here, these are the gateways. So in this example here, what we're seeing is stage one is that the idea gets created. Stage two, it's being developed. Stage three, it's at a scoring stage. Then there's a condition. And then if that condition is met, it goes off to initiate a project. If it's not met, then it just doesn't happen. So you've got these stages here. So across the top, you've got these stages, and then within each stage, you have certain data conditions. So there's data steps. They're called data steps. So you might need to say that, okay, this needs to be completed, this needs to be completed, all of these need to be completed before you can advance to here. So the business process flow designer, the business process flow designer is where you go to set up those gateways and those rules that the user must follow, or the process must follow. Actually, the users, people within that process, must follow to advance it through its stages, through its gates. The name of the business process flow, this is mentioned in the labs, but the name of the business process flow, don't name it the same as a table. This actually creates a table in the background. So that's noted in the lab documents. Here is Power BI, so you can embed Power BI dashboards into here. This is a really old interface here, but you can embed reports into model-driven apps. You can also embed them into Canvas apps. So just be aware of that. And there's a whole bunch of model-driven sample apps that you can deploy and play with. Now, the thing that you can't do if you signed up for a trial tenant, as we advise you to do, you actually can't do this. You can't deploy model-driven apps because what you need is to deploy this sample apps and data, and you can't deploy sample apps and data into a default environment, and nor can you create another environment in your trial tenant in which you can deploy those sample apps and data. So you're in a bit of a sticking point there. If you're in a work environment, though, if you've created a developer account, then you can create an environment and include sample apps and data, and then you can play with this model-driven sample apps. But if you are in a trial tenant, unfortunately, you can't do that. But yeah, you get the gist of it by building this out anyway. You'll get the capability of what model-driven apps can do. Okay. Custom pages. These are a newish feature in Canvas apps. It is the roadmap is very clear that these two the custom Canvas apps and model-driven apps are converging in features, especially with the design, the way that you designed them. And there is custom pages now available in model-driven apps, and they create more of a canvas that you can paint on. And it's related to the modern app designer as well. So just know that custom pages are available as well. Just be aware that this feature is actively rolling out, at least it was at the time of back in January. It's still considered preview, but you can play around with it and see what that's like. Okay, you are now into Handson Lab number 3. So lab number 3, here's the PDF for lab number 3. Yeah, so the homepage has changed since these lab documents, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of it has changes more over time. Let me just go. So what it will look like in your environment is, let's go here. So in your apps page, you go new app, you can go to model driven app here, or you can go create. If I go model driven app here, you'll get this box here, and you want to choose classic app designer, not modern app designer, to click create. Go ahead and do the lab, and if you need any support, reach out to us using the support bot. Come back after the lab, so pause this video, come back after the lab, and I'll show you how to view in the modern app designer. Okay, so if you do want to play around with the preview of the modern app designer, here's how you do that. So you go into the 3 ellipses, then rather than clicking straight on edit here, there's a little option here to edit in preview. Click on that, and this will bring up the modern app designer here, which has a much better preview option here. And it looks a lot more like a Canvas app. You've got pages, here's your navigation. So here's the navigation bar, so you can see here what's on here. So you can take these off. Rather than the sitemap, you've got different options for that. So if you're going to add things to that, actually there's no more things to add. Or add a group or a sub area. So yeah, you can add these. You can see here you can. It's better than than adding them through the sitemap and things like that. So feel free to go into here and play around with the new designer. You can always go back by switching to classic here, and that will take you back to the original sitemap. So this here is the preview of and you can see here that the app, you can see the app, how it looks for the end user, which is cool. Cool. that is the end of module, it's actually module 4 in our environment, but it's lab number 3. So you've created a standalone model-driven app in the lab. We've shown you how to customize forms for the model-driven app, and you've created a business process flow that guides the users through that business process. Thank you for watching and for doing the lab, and we'll see you in the next lab, which is all around Power Automate.